has bestowed upon us. Grateful for this great land that we live in, and for the freedoms and the opportunities that we enjoy here. Father, we're grateful for this community and for those great people who reside here that make it a great place to live and to raise our families. We're grateful for those blessings that thou bestows upon us as a community. We're grateful for those men and women who serve our country as well as our community in protecting and providing our freedoms. Father, we seek for special blessing to be upon them and upon their families, that they might be watched over, protected, and blessed for their services. Father, now we ask for thy blessings and guidance to be with us as we counsel and discuss the city's business this night, that we might be inspired and guided in making the decisions that would be the most beneficial for the quality of life of our residents and our community. We pray that we would have cordial conversations with each other and reason and counsel together, that we might find those best solutions. Father, we seek special blessings for those in our community that stand in need of those blessings, that they would be provided for, whether those needs be health or whether they be physical needs. Father, we ask that would help us to make those needs known to us, that we might help in providing those services to them. Again, we give guidance and direction. We're thankful for all that thou does for us. And we do this in the name of thy Son and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda, but we need to eliminate 8C. That was tabled till the 13th of December. It was inadvertently put on our on this meeting's schedule, so we apologize. That's dealing with the Washington County School District, Merrill Road, Sandia Drive property. If you're here for that, we apologize. That is scheduled for December 13th.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the agenda with the elimination of item 8C.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Thank you. I forgot to excuse Councilman Nyson. He in some family business tonight. Item 2, announcements. I just want to invite all of you that are out here the Monday after Thanksgiving. We always do our Christmas in Dixie. Over here at our Veterans Park, we have some elementary schools that bring their kids out to sing, and we have a wagon that goes up to the Covington home, and we serve hot chocolate and donuts. It's always been a good time. We light the Christmas tree. So that kicks off our Christmas season. So we invite you at 6 o'clock on Monday.
Mayor, also, I'd like to, as part of our announcements, just recognize and give thanks to those members of our community that put on our Veterans Day celebration. What a great celebration that was. Certainly appreciative to those great veterans in our community and the service that they've given to us. But think we had a lot of citizens that put that on, and certainly appreciate their service there.
Thank you. Any others? If not, we'll move on to item 3, declaration of abstention and conflict. Anything to declare at this time by the council? If not, we'll move on to item 4, consent agenda, to a motion to approve the minutes of the city council meeting of 11/8/2017.
Mayor, move approval of the minutes of 11/8/2017 on the consent agenda.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. Those are approved. Item 5, canvassing consideration to approve the canvassing of the November 7th municipal general election. City Recorder Denise Bullock.
Good evening, council. As of the last election, we had received 100 ballots that hadn't been counted. Today at noon, went over to the county and we finished those totals. We have 11,330 registered voters. We had a 21.4% 0.47% turnout. I gave you a breakdown of the tallies, and let's see. So let me read you how the final totals turned out. Kenneth F. Nelson, 1,331. Ben L. Martinson, 1,072. For council, I have Garth Nyson at 1,053. Kurt F. Ivy, 1,086. Daniel Clough at 1,237, and Daniel Ward at 1,153.
That was Douglas Ward, not Daniel.
Oh, Douglas. I got him crossed there. Do we have any questions? I'd like to thank the county. Kim Hafen and Melanie are here. If you have any questions that you would like to address with them, they're our counting center for when it comes to our elections, and they've really helped us out a lot.
The whole county was pretty similar in turnout, wasn't it?
I think pretty much about 20 all the way around. Yeah.
Virgin had 93%.
They do vote by mail, and they had 93%.
And they have 5 people.
Well, over the years,
So-
excuse me.
So are they the only city that does vote by mail?
No. Do you know who all?
Springdale,
Spring-
Rockville, Virgin, Enterprise, Phoenix.
There's getting to be more and more of them all the time.
Do we know the averages of those that are vote by mail?
Turnout.
More than 20.
I think the last I heard on Springdale, they were around 60.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think 60 is about average.
When I will mention, a couple of years ago, Salt Lake County did their primary by mail-in and was about 60% as well. So
Yeah.
it's just not an anomaly with small cities.
It's mail.
Yeah. I've noticed a lot more of the younger families that don't get out to voting centers love the ability to vote by mail, and also seniors that would just as soon do the research and vote at home and mail the ballots back to us rather than come on election day and stand in line. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Denise.
I need a motion to approve
We
the
didn't,
canvas.
I need to
Oh, okay.
entertain a motion to approve those.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we accept the canvassing of our November 7th municipal general election. It's been presented.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
All right, those are approved. Item 6, plat amendment. Consideration to approve the amendment to the Creekside Townhomes final plat located approximately 200 South, 300 West. Applicant North Star Investments.
Thank you, Mayor. Just let me get all my tapping done here and we'll jump into this. The applicant is requesting an amended, and it's actually the second amended final plat for the Creekside Townhomes. Basically, for this amendment, and I'll just kind of zoom in on the area being affected. If you look at units 115 through 119, there used to be a 120. The applicant's wishing to drop that unit, just like they did with the units 121 through 25. That was a first amendment there. They went from a 6-plex to a 5, and they're wishing to do the same here with units 115 through 119. Also, they needed to shift the footprints of units 109 through 114 just to get it because of the retaining wall that was built there. Make some slight adjustments there on moving it. So those are basically the two items that brought this for us for a plat amendment is those two. With that said, staff still finds that the proposed amended final plat Still meets the zoning, which was a PUD in this area, and for the city subdivision ordinance. Staff recommended approval to the Planning Commission, who reviewed it at their November 15th meeting. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the second amended final plat for the Creekside Townhome subdivision. Onto you, the City Council, with the findings and subject to the conditions, which are standard 5, since this pretty much subdivision's been in place for a while. They're just making those 2 changes on this. With that said, I'll be glad to answer any questions the council might have.
They weren't all standard conditions. This isn't. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, we just kind of leave them in there to make sure in case nothing, those are the ones we want on every plat. And sometimes an amended one, they usually just go in and just tweak the few things on here. We just make sure that those things are still in place before we get them recorded.
Drew, the trail system underneath that, has that been put in or?
Not yet. Probably what's going to happen here, like we've done with a few others, will probably, at least I'm hoping I may have Jason come up and talk to it, but generally what happens, they'll put in an escrow account if they don't want to get it done. And we ask them to do that because it's hard popping in something there out in the middle of nowhere. So they take the engineer, we'll do an estimate, Public Works and Barry will look at it and say, that's appropriate. They'll pay us money. It goes into escrow account. And then when the time comes, we build them.
That's what I was wondering if that happened.
That will be probably taking place. Is that right, Jason? This one more or less will be happening.
Any other questions or comments? Any for the applicant? Anybody ready to make an motion?
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the amendment to the Creekside Townhomes final plat located at approximately 200 south and 300 west.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Dellison, aye.
Granger, aye.
IVI.
All right, that is approved. Item 7, public hearings. Excuse me. And related ordinances/resolution. Item A, public hearing for consideration to approve a zone change request, Z-17-32, to change zoning designation from A20, agriculture 20-acre lots, to R110, single-family residential 10,000 square foot lots, located approximately 1575 South and Karma Street. Applicant Sullivan Homes LLC.
Thank you, Mayor. As stated, this is a zone change for approximately 6.00 acres. The requested change, as stated, is from the A20 agricultural 20 acre to the single family residential 10,000 square foot R110 zoning. The R110 request is for the purpose of developing this particular area that you see in your exhibit into a future residential development. The general plan land use designations for this particular location is the low density residential. Within the low density residential, the general plan, it carries a 3 to 4 dwelling unit per acre density ratio. In other words, it basically consists of 2 zones, the R110 or the R112. Also, the surrounding zoning to this parcel is R110 to the north and west, with the A20 to the south, which is the big knoll, and R112, RA half, and PUD to the east, which is across the street, Washington Fields Road there. So it fits with the 2 areas closest to it, to the north and the west. Staff reviewed the requested zone change, finds it conforms to the general plan. The Planning Commission reviewed it and held a public hearing on November 1st, 2017. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of Z-17-32 for the change from Ag 20 to the proposed R110. Onto you, the City Council, and that's based on the findings you see in your report. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Again, this was the property we talked about with PUD. They still want to do that on the south side of the knoll, but for here, just to get started and get some things moving, they wanted to get this to the R110 and get some lots built. And then they will come back to you folks and the Planning Commission when the new PUDs are in place and kind of work through that process with the property to the south down by the light. So any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
The proposed park, the park that's been discussed a little bit, was part of the PUD, but now is really a little bit remote from what's left for the PUD. what's the discussion around that?
Well, that'll still come because it's down. Let me bring up probably the aerial versus this. I think that'll still be part of their proposal. Let me just get there and.
This piece.
The park will be more intended on that area. Let me just go up. Around this area.
Okay, I'm getting it.
Zoning that they're asking for ends right up here.
Okay,
All in the straight zone.
okay.
So that's why they want to just go to the R110 so they can get
Yeah.
going. They will be back. And again, all that will be incorporated into that
Thank
PUD
you.
design.
Okay.
I knew that would be clear once we could see, down in this portion, that it'll be tied to that.
No other questions for Drew? How about the applicant?
I got a quick question for the applicant.
Bob Hermanson with Bush and Gudgel.
Well, we'll see how the public hearing goes, but it was discussed before possibly running a trail right at the toe of the hill up to where that draw is so people could access to hike and things like that. Is that still part of your plans?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. The only difference is, and I'll point up here for you. Instead of running along the toe, our intent, just because of the slopes and the way the proposed layout is that we can have blocks back against the hill. It's just run the trail through here, get on the sidewalk, and then on the road, we just come up here to the cul-de-sac. That's one option. And then there's just an open area in the back of the cul-de-sac. There isn't anything there. We just kind of widen out the right of way, so it's actually dedicated more than just the cul-de-sac. You can park there and have the trail, then you go up here to whatever.
Okay.
Yep. So, it's very minorly different.
How much parking would there be there?
We haven't even looked at that yet. Like, we're just trying to get through this, and then the preliminary plat would show all of that in the next step. But we've widened it out so that there's more, but I don't know the numbers. Yeah, we haven't done it yet.
I think my only, concerns are brought up, but right off the top of my head, that's something I'd like to see maintained.
Sure. And that's the client's intent as well, is to have access.
Sure.
Yeah, we've been talking through it as well. So that hasn't changed.
Any other questions? Thank you. This is a public hearing. We invite any and all of you who have an interest in this piece. Pro, con, however, come on up, state your name.
Evening, Council. My name is Kenneth Gregory. I live at 1575 South. They're almost 493 East. Can you tell me where the park you're talking about is going to go? Is it in that small sliver right in front of our dwellings?
I just showed that over here.
It's,
It's not in concrete right now. They showed us some preliminary plans of a PUD. It'll be roughly right here where the road green and stuff is. That's in the future development to the south.
Okay. And the next question, the houses that run along 1575, will they fronts face 1575 or they'll be the rear of the dwellings?
Sounds like he's saying they're fronting.
Yeah, they're basically mirrored into the houses across the street. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions for that gentleman? Anybody else? 10, 9, 8. Any motion to close this public? We will not make a decision on this until the next council meeting.
So moved.
Second,
I have a motion and a second.
IVI.
Granger, aye.
Johnson, aye.
Turk, aye.
All right. That moves on. Thank you. Item B, public hearing for consideration to grant a donation to the Senior Court Program of Washington County. Is that you?
Hope not. This is What's that? The presenter was supposed to be here to make this because, of course, any donations require a public hearing. And so I'm not,
We may entertain a motion just to,
You know, I mean, I'll just make a motion that we table it.
or even move it down to later in the agenda in case the president comes.
Are
Give
being,
a notice for the public hearing. You might want to have folks
Or-
who came for it to be able to talk if they wanted to.
are B and C the same thing?
Well, one would be to act on it.
yeah.
One's the public hearing, the next
Okay,
is.
So if
sorry.
you wanted to continue until later in the agenda, you'd probably continue them both till later in the agenda.
Let's see if they come.
Because we've given them notice for the public hearing already.
Well, I'm happy to make a motion that we continue items B and C to later in the agenda. And then if it comes back up, then we can table it at that point.
Right. That's probably good.
Well, or we don't know if there are people here for the public hearing, do we?
As long as they're aware that we're going to continue it on. If anybody has a concern that they wanted to make a comment now, I guess you could entertain it.
Well, we
But I
would,
think our city manager is going to try to find out.
I'll find out. Let me
Yeah,
see if I
real
can find
soon.
some now. We didn't have anything in the back of there. So, do we have anything in the back? All right. We'll
That's
just move
right.
on and
She
then follow
did.
through on it. I haven't heard of
I'm remembering that.
the one I was going.
Yeah.
All right, we'll entertain that motion to
She did talk to us.
move it down the aisle.
Has it been seconded?
Not yet.
I'll second the motion.
IBI.
Ranger, I.
Dallas and I.
Turk, aye.
Thank you. We'll move on to item D, public hearing for consideration to adopt the Washington City Culinary Wastewater Plan and Impact Fee Facilities Plan. Mike
We
Shaw?
discuss wanting to table this.
Yeah,
Well, we're going to have the public hearing and then
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So in our previous work session, we presented this one with the public hearing. We'll present again. We completed the study in the first part of October of this year and worked on it for about a year. We contracted with Sunrise Engineering to complete the study, and Dustin Schaefer and Steve Hall did a great job putting this together. And so I'll turn it over to Dustin to give a quick presentation on it and then answer any questions.
should be polished now.
I'll try and be fairly brief and concise since I've heard some of this. It's good to be with you here tonight. And as Mike mentioned, we've recently completed this facilities plan and impact fee analysis. This is a follow-up to previous master plans. The last one was completed in 2010. This study looks at what we call 5-point analysis, where we look at your water rights, water source capacity, storage capacity, water treatment capabilities, and then your distribution system. Two of the key factors that we look at before we jump into planning on the engineering side with what your water needs are, we look at your growth, what the historic growth has been, long-term, more recently, and then what the projections are going forward. For this plan, we've used a 3% growth rate for a 20-year planning period. Also, looking back over historical water usage from the city's records, we've determined that over the last 2 or 3 years, your average usage has been about 427 gallons per day per residential connection. And that's fairly similar to what it has been historically. In 2010, we determined it was about 425, so pretty much staying the same. We use those growth projections as well as the water usage to project your needs for the water resources. This is a list of your current water sources, your wells, your connections to the district, Water Conservancy districts, facilities, and the ability to deliver water into your city. Using state projections and historical city usage, we've determined that there's an existing surplus of about 7,900 gallons per minute. little closer there. There's an existing surplus of about 7,900 gallons per minute that you're able to bring into your city. In the 20-year planning period, there's still a surplus, but it's significantly less, and it reduces your level of service significantly to where you're closer to a kind of a break-even situation and not able to meet peaking needs. We've got a few recommendations as far as going forward, including upgrades and expansion of your treatment plant that treats water from Quail Lake. So it's raw water purchased from the district that you then treat through your treatment plant. There's the option of drilling additional wells up in the Grapevine Pass area. There's already a water line that is capable of delivering a significantly a greater amount of water to your tank. So adding some wells there is an option. And then there's also a couple of future planned connections to the Water Conservancy District's line out in the south part of the city. This is a list of your current storage tanks. You have 6 of them. They total about 7.8 million gallons. Again, you've got a surplus right now of about 2.6 million gallons. We project that in 20 years, you're going to have a shortage of about 1.5 million gallons. A couple of things that I've noted earlier. One is if the city, which you have been looking at possibly a secondary irrigation system, if that were to be implemented and you only needed water for indoor use, you would save a lot of water for culinary use, and you'd have a significant surplus there. Another factor that we consider is location of your tanks and how it delivers water to various parts of the city, especially newly developing areas. It's kind of hard to move water from one side of town to the other, and so having storage facilities close to those locations is desirable. This is a list of some recommended storage tank locations and sizes and approximate years that we estimate. Some of those that schedule is based on when capacity is needed, and so a lot of it's developed on when anticipated growth is expected to occur in those areas. The last thing I wanted to highlight here is your distribution system. We've modeled your entire network. You've got great coverage. Over the past 20 years, the Public Works Department's really been on top of hitting all of the problem areas, and you have a good functioning working system that delivers pressure throughout the system that's needed and adequate fire flows for emergency situations. So the recommendations here are 2 of them are continuations of previous recommendations, and that's just to have development contribute in their own way by having loop lines that help the water circulate better, and also performing analyses on their systems as they bring it into the city, so that you're getting a product that's going to add to and work well with your current system. The 4 new recommendations are all associated with those tank locations that we highlighted, and those are in growing areas. The first one at Red Cliffs, up above Green Springs, and that's going to be coming up here shortly. Long Valley, there's anticipated to be new development with the Southern Parkway, Sunrise Valley, and then out in the Warner area. This here is summarizing all those, and then in the master plan, there's a more detailed cost estimates that highlight more of the various items that are associated with these projects. But this is a summary. As you can see, these are projects in the next 10-year window. They total about almost $13 million. So this is kind of the basis for getting into user rates and impact fees, and how the city would would finance projects like these. So jumping into your water rates, this is a copy of your existing rate structure. The last full year of billing information shows that your average customer pays about $33.50 a month. And that's a combination of a base rate and an overage rate, as you can see there. So to determine, as you move forward, there's inflation, there's growth. We're looking at potential new improvements. And so we've broken down the costs of those improvements, your budget for your water department, O&M costs, employee costs, and calculated a needed water rate of $35.99 per resident, equivalent residential unit. So it's about I think it's about $1.50 increase. In addition to that, as you're aware, there's a Water Conservancy District has a $1.75 a month surcharge. And we've also, in part of your report, we've done an estimate for a rate table for a non-resident rate. And so this would be an example of a potential base rate on the left and tiered overage rate on the right. Impact fees. So this is a copy of your existing impact fee table based on meter size. You can see the basic residential unit's going to be about $2,100. As we do the impact fee analysis, it's very strictly regulated by state law. They're very particular about what needs to be included. These fees can only be expended for the improvements that are designated in your facilities plan, not for anything else. And any impact fees that are collected have to be spent within 6 years of when they're received. Otherwise, they would have to be returned. And your staff, I know, does a good job of keeping track of all these and understanding how that works. So in summary, we take those cost estimates that I showed earlier for the different projects and determine what parts of those projects are eligible for impact fee consideration. Those have to be costs that are only needed for new growth. Maintenance costs don't apply. Also, it'd have to be a cost that that capacity of the new improvement would be used in the planning period. Now, the master plan's for a 20-year planning window, but this impact fee calculation is just looking at a 10-year window because of that 6-year requirement of not wanting to look too far out and having an impact fee that's not appropriate. So the impact fee eligible costs are about $9.8 million in that 10-year period. In that 10-year period, there's based on the growth projections, there would be a little over 4,000 new equivalent residential units added to the system. So the simple math is you divide the cost by the new units, and your maximum allowable impact fee is $22,412. The council could choose to adopt an impact fee that is anything up to that number. We recommend that these get reviewed at least every 5 years. If there's significant changes in economy or growth, probably maybe even a little sooner. So in the plan, there's also an evaluation of the connection fees, but that's separate from the impact fee. And all that is the actual cost to the city to install the meter at the location. It'll be the physical cost of the meter and I think an hour of labor for your employees. So that's a summary of the impact fee facility plan and impact fee analysis. So entertain any questions.
Any questions for Dustin that we haven't already asked and answered?
Yeah, we pretty well asked them in the workshop, so thank you for all your good
Yeah, thanks, Dustin.
answers.
Okay, this is a public hearing about your water. Any questions, comments, or concerns? You're welcome to share them. Okay. Entertain a motion.
Mayor, seeing no one come forward, I'll make a motion. We close the public hearing.
Second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellison, aye.
Turek, aye.
Okay, I think there's a sentiment to table this.
Yeah.
I'll
I think
entertain a
after
motion to do
some
that.
discussion amongst the council after our workshop meeting. We wanted a little more time to digest this and look through it. So I'll make the motion that we table item
D.
C,
D.
8C, which is the consideration to approve our ordinance of adopting this master
C.
feed impact fee facilities plan.
Oh, that would be 7E and F.
7E.
Oh, excuse me, not
7E
7E and
and
7F. I'll make the motion, we table both of those.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellison, aye.
Turek, aye.
All right, that is tabled.
Yeah,
December 13th.
for both items.
Yeah.
For both items. Okay, item F, consideration to approve a resolution adopting excuse me. Item G, public hearing for consideration to clarifying / amending the Washington City 2013 electrical impact fee. Power Director Rick Hansen.
2013?
That's when the current ordinance is.
Okay.
Is the
All
20.
right.
Clarifying again,
All right.
So
It's not a typo.
the impact fees are based on panel sizes and voltages. The original impact fee schedule did not include all possible panel sizes. And since I've been here, there's been a little bit of confusion of what to do if somebody comes in with a panel size in between what was shown in that table. So the sole purpose of this amendment clarification is to add some additional line items to that table, specifically addressing typically the 125 and the 150 amp residential was probably the biggest area where we ran into that. There's no change in the formula or methodology. So basically a 150 amp panel, the fee will be right in between a 100 and a 200 as you would expect it. And so it just helps the public know how that fee is assessed, as well as assist the staff in implementing that. Any questions?
On a 12240 single phase between residential and commercial, why the difference?
If you look at the top of the table, the assumptions that are used, the utilization factor, typically a commercial panel is loaded more heavily for the same size than a residential. And the power factor assumption that was used in the original study is slightly different as well.
I just emphasize, Mayor, as you move into the public hearing portion, that there is no anticipated change to the impact fee. It's just a clarification of the language.
Correct. Yeah. If you compare the tables and in your packets, the red items are all that was added, but there's really no change to the formula or methodology.
Any questions for Rick? All right, thank you. Again, it's a public hearing about your power. I guess if we have no other comment, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Ellison, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
Thank you. Item H, consideration to approve an ordinance of Washington City clarifying, amending the 2013 electrical impact fee.
No, just.
Mayor, with no other discussion, I'll make the motion that we approve the ordinance clarifying and amending the 2013 electrical impact fee.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Turek, aye.
Bellis and I.
Granger, aye.
Ivy, aye.
All right, thank you. That is approved. Item 8.
Point.
Okay.
when we- Before you move on to the other topic.
All right. Okay, we'll move back to item B.
So I wasn't here for this. This is why it didn't ring a bell with me, but on October 10th work session, the Senior Corps program presented this to the council in a work session. And as I look at it, it appears that we do have 2 senior companion. These are senior volunteers that work with 10 clients within Washington City. We have 2 foster grandparents serving in elementary schools within Washington City as well. And there is a request for a donation by the city to cover some of their mileage in that. And they're requesting both for the senior companion program, $250, for the foster grandparent program, $250, for a grand total request of $500 from the city. And of course, we are required to have these public hearings if the council was to consider such.
Questions or comments on that? All right. It is a public hearing. Going to talk about $500?
The one comment
Sure.
is that it did appear that, one, we have a need in the city, and 2, that they're working very hard to make a difference in the lives of some of these people. And I found myself to be very supportive of the donation.
I think that other discussion was that we were anticipating it could be used even to a greater, to involve more people. And so I think that would be a good investment to keep that
Thank you.
opportunity for them.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion then to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. Item C, consideration to approve granting the donation to the Senior Corps program of Washington County.
Mayor, I'd make that motion to approve a grant to the Senior Corps program of Washington County in the amount of $500.
Thank you. Have a second.
I'll happily second that.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
Thank you. That has passed. Item 8, ordinance continuation of consideration to approve an ordinance adopting zone change request Z-17-25 to create a new PUD plan unit development located at approximately Bella Vista Drive. Applicant SJ Property Holdings LLC.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, what was proposed to you last week, we kind of focused in on this phase 1 area, is what the evolution of this project has come to. And it's been tabled several times. The council 2 weeks ago wanted to have a little more time to digest this. And from the discussion that was had, now the applicant, Mr. Stephen Howcroft, would like to just take a few minutes and let you know what he's found from those discussions that was brought forward, especially about the 55 and older kind of stuff. So if that's okay, Mayor, we'll just give him a few minutes.
Sure.
Then you can.
Thank you. My name is Steve Howcroft. I represent the developer. First, I want to tell you that we really appreciate being able to work with you guys. We know you're in a very tough position, and in many cases, you can't make everybody happy. There's just no way. We realize that sometimes you're put in a position where you have to pick winners and losers, like Nightly Rentals, where a competitor may get that approval, another developer may not. And we realize that you do this for pretty much nothing. I realize you don't get a lot of compensation. And so we salute you for that. We really appreciate it. And as we get to know each of you better through these meetings and elsewhere, we have nothing but respect for all of you. So we appreciate what you do. This has been really a tough project. I've been in a lot of these, and it's always the same issues. the people who are there don't want other people generally, and they always have the same typical arguments: too much traffic, they don't like the noise, not enough water, the schools are overcrowded, that type of thing. This particular project has been pretty difficult in that we've had, well, for one example, we had somebody get up and represent that it looked like drawings that his children had done at barracks represented our product. And I've never seen that before. Then there was the case where a guy who just moved down into Horizon West stated that if children moved into the subdivision adjacent to the subdivision he lived in, he was moving. I thought, really? Can that be? But what was more disheartening was the response that the council gave, and I don't know if it was in support of him or clarification, but that, can't you see, they don't want those people here. And, you know, not because it's the law, but because it's the right thing to do. We choose not to discriminate because of race, religion, color, or age. And that being said, we realized that there was a law pertaining to 55 and older communities. I'm somewhat embarrassed to say that I knew very little about it. We built over the years probably 4,000 homes, and never before have I done a 55 or older community. I'm familiar with Sun River, and I know Darcy Stewart, who is a developer there, but that was about the extent of my knowledge of 55 and older communities. So when the discussion last meeting in the council turned to turning this into a 55 or older community, I was somewhat blindsided and thought, I went home thinking I've got to find out exactly what this entails. And it was pretty much, I spent the evening on the internet just kind of researching it. It was pretty much as your attorney and staff had indicated, that it requires that one person in each household be at least 55 or older. And there's a 2080 rule that basically says that up to 20% of the community can be exempt from that requirement of one person being 55 or older in the household. And the discussion covered a lot of different cases to kind of help you get a feel what the law really would allow. And I'd like to just briefly tell you a couple of them. There's a situation where a man had died and he was 55, over 55, and he willed his property to his son, and his son was living with him at the time, and they allowed that to be a hardship because they hadn't met the 20% situation. In the exact same situation in another community, the mother had died, and the son living with the mother made application to continue to live there, and they denied that because the community had already hit the 20% requirement. So he was denied that. There's another situation where a man and woman was deeded the property from the woman's mother, and they already had their own home and were living outside the community, but decided that they wanted to sell the home and move into the home that they were deeded. And so they made application to do that, and they were denied because it didn't meet the hardship requirement. They felt like they were doing it to get financial gain rather than any hardship situation. There's a situation where man and woman were living in a unit, and the woman was 53 and the guy had died and he was like 59, and they allowed her to continue to live there, but they took away her key to the pool and the clubhouse, saying that those amenities were for members only 55 and older. And the controlling body, the policing body, is always the HOA in these situations. The last example is elderly couple was living in a community, and the man had died, and the woman was pretty elderly. I think she was like 91, and she couldn't live by herself, but she didn't want to move into an assisted living situation. So the family got together, and the only one in the family that could go and live with her was an 18-year-old daughter who had just graduated from high school. So they made application, and they were denied because they had restrictions in the 55 and older community. They had to be at least 21 to live there. So there's all different kinds of things that come up, and I think I much better understand the 55 and older community now, the regulations. You know, we're doing a project in Brio, and we go through there every day, and we see people there, and they stop and talk to us about what we're doing. And mostly that community is adults. Many of them are, of course, less than 55. They're out running the trails and going through the projects, etc. But we feel like we would lots rather see the market dictate where our clients are, rather than us do a 55 and older community. We would hate to do a project where we felt like our own people are, like James, for example, my partner, or even Brandy, they couldn't live in the project because they didn't qualify. Again, we would lots rather see the market dictate that. I went on the internet and just tried to see in Washington City what communities were 55 and older. And I couldn't find a single one. Now I'm sure there are some, but none of them are advertising on the internet 55 or older, or I couldn't find any. So, you know, we would like to, after doing our homework, respectfully request that you approve our project as it's been submitted and as it's been approved based upon recommendations from the Planning Commission and your staff. Your staff has been excellent to work with. They have made a lot of good recommendations. Drew's been really good, and we've been approved twice now through the Planning Commission. And the staff is continuing to recommend it. And again, I respectfully request that you approve our application as submitted and as amended through all the input we have got from all of you. In ending, let me just relate a story to you. I'm also a commercial pilot, and for the last 25 years, I've been flying part-time for the LDS Church, and mostly working with the tribes and the reservations throughout the West. And one of our assignments has been to go to the reservations and do assemblies in the high school. And we put together a group of professional athletes to go with us. Steve Young, Johnny Miller, Todd Miller, Chad Lewis, Keith Clearwater, and in the older days, Paul Dunn and Billy Casper. And we'd go out to the reservations, and we would do assemblies to get them to stay in school, encourage them to stay in school and to get an education and to stay off drugs. And when we would do these assemblies, they'd close the elementary schools, they'd close the middle schools, the high schools. Everyone in the community would come to these assemblies. And Steve Young would almost always close his presentation with the story of the 49ers when they played at the 49ers Stadium in San Francisco. As they left the locker room and went out into the stadium, they had to go through a tunnel. At the entry of this tunnel, at the top of the sign, there was a sign that said, "Never give up." And as the athletes went through, each one of them would jump and slap that sign with authority as a renewal of their commitment to never give up. And he used to talk about Jerry Rice, how he was always the first one on the field practicing, always the last one at night. When he wasn't practicing on the field, he was either running or working out in the gym, and he'd say, even when the 49ers were down 20 points, Steve Young would, and even in the third and fourth quarter, Jerry Rice would be out setting personal running records and receiving records, and he never gave up. And the reason I tell you that story is I just want you to know that we're committed to this project. Over my life, I've had so many challenges, and I always, from Steve Young's story there, I would jump up and hit that sign with authority mentally as a renewal, as to commit to never give up. You know, whether we get approved or denied tonight, we'll be back working with you because we have a lot of faith in this project. It's an excellent location. It's entitled right. The entitlements to go with the property, the zoning, the master plan is right. So we just want you to know that, again, we respect you. We have learned a lot from you. You've helped us with our project, but again, whether it's approved or not, we'll be back and keep trying. James, have you got anything you want to add?
Thank you, Steve.
I don't know if I can add to that. Last meeting, you guys asked us what the benefits of this community would be. James Jessup, by the way, I represent the developer. In this first phase, it'll build out 56 houses. It'll employ hundreds of workers in your town, growing the businesses that I sat in last council listening to us hiring out an outside source to draw business and people in here. Construction is the #1 business of this town. So we'll facilitate that. It will, if it goes the way we'd like it to, it'll employ 2 full-time management companies, one on the landscape, one on the inside of the houses as well. There's a couple other companies that'll bring to Washington City. Right now, the property is weeded, garbage. It drains onto Horizons West. Their walls are corroding. They do get water running through those walls and into their yards right now. Through the construction of this, it will take all that drainage and put it in the right channels that it needs to. And it will correct that drainage draining onto Horizons West. Permits and impact fees, from what we've seen that we've had to pay for, or that we've needed to pay to build each individual houses. With this development in the first phase, Washington City and the impact fee collectors, the different management with the water conservancy district and the others, it'll be over $1 million. And over the entire project, it'll be over $6 million in impact fees to build out this project. With this first phase, that portion of Bella Vista will finally be landscaped. It'll look much better than it does now, and it will provide a good entrance into Bella Vista, especially with the driveways pulled off of Bella Vista as the neighbors sitting behind me and you guys have requested. You know, Steve's done a lot of building up north, and I think that it's important to you guys to, like how I have, partner with those kind of builders. They bring a lot of education. They bring a lot of experience to a community, maybe much more than you can hire someone out to bring. He lives here in Washington City. And I think he's equally motivated as each one of you guys to see this city build out. That's it.
Thanks.
So with that, Mayor, the decision now is with you. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of the PUD. Now, again, this has been modified a bit to this phase 1, so that's what's before you tonight, is this particular area that's on the screen.
I think And certainly I appreciate your comments from both of you. I think the discussion last time wasn't in an attempt to try to exclude anybody, but more trying to work with the layout that's before us. The density of the layout, if it's a single family neighborhood, it's tight to me. If you look at it in the context of a 55 plus, I know there's ways to work through that and work around it. So that discussion to me was never a exclusionary discussion. So I apologize if you took it that way, but that was not the intent of it. As it is, the development is about 30% denser than Horizons West. Given how tight that project is, I'm trying to find ways to work through the current layout and make it work. What we don't want to have is another project that we brought up a few weeks ago, where we have those parking issues and where we have those other problems, because it's just because we have a different project that's on the books doesn't mean that we need to let out another project that's on the books that we foresee similar issues with. So that's where my concern and my discomfort, I guess, has been.
Councilman Bellison, I appreciate your concerns and your input there. Since our last meeting, I actually have had the opportunity to go do a little exploring in some other communities, planned communities, and looking at densities and lot sizes. And to be honest with you, with the developer's desire to have this wide open, brings me huge concerns with the compactness of what we've got, especially with kids, because there is no place for a kid to play here but in the 34-foot wide road that as I was in exploring, it was in an adult community, and there were several people just walking the streets, but you really had to watch even where you were driving with adults walking the streets, let alone kids playing in the streets. So I'll be honest with you, by opening it clear up, I am very opposed to the current layout, just simply for the mere fact that I just don't see that it's compatible with kids and family life in there. It just doesn't work. It's too tight.
And I don't want to be redundant, but I believe that we talked a lot about just garages and parking and how young families would have more of those type things that would create parking problems. And when we considered a 55, that concern was maybe lessened a little bit. But I agree, I think we have never addressed the original concern, in having this project going back to a general rather than 55 and older. I think it creates the same issues that we had originally.
Any other comments? Are you ready to make a motion?
Some comments.
All right.
Always thought as a PUD as an opportunity to do some unique things to create space in some areas for density in other areas. But I look at that and all I see is density. I don't see that it's been made more livable. I have respect for the builder and the people that have worked so hard on this project. But it feels as though we've made no progress in this particular area, except for turning the roads in and getting them off that street and the one stories on the one side to make it more compatible with the neighbors. But as part of the way that it's designed, I don't see why it's a PUD. I just see density, and maybe more density than makes it very livable for people. So it continues to be a problem for me, the responsibility that we have to the city and to the people that move into the city and that will move into these homes is great. We're reminded by it constantly. You're right, we're not making money here. But we are trying to build a future for the city and the people that live in it. And I'm repeating myself now. I don't see what I envision in a PUD. I just see density in this part of it. It's creating additional discomfort for me.
There was some discussion last time about maybe starting with a different phase one, because there are other portions of the project that I think are workable as they are. But what we have before us is the current phase one that's being requested, and I think it needs some rework.
All right, having said that, any other questions or comments?
If you're ready for a motion, Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we deny the ordinance adopting zone change request Z-17-25 to create a new PUD located at approximately Bella Vista Drive.
I'll second that.
Was that, and just so you're not stating the same things, you just did pretty articulate, for the reasons that you mentioned, incorporating anybody else's also? Because those are some reasons and justifications that.
If you want me to state the reasons why,
No,
I'll make the motion.
I think you
I'm
can
happy
just
to do
incorporate
that.
them because they were pretty succinct and we should have them on the record anyway. But those are the reasons.
Those would be the reasons why. Yeah.
Would they include Council Granger's comments also?
Sure.
With that, I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Ellis and I.
Turek, aye.
All right, that one is denied. Move on to item B, continuation of consideration to approve an ordinance adopting zone change request Z-17-27, creating a residential rental short-term overlay zone located approximately Bella Vista Drive. Same applicant.
Well, I'll kind of keep this brief. The planning commission recommended 3-2 vote for approval, but I think since the PUD is not approved, might make this motion very easy for the council, and I'll just leave that with you if they have no PUD.
I'm happy to give my thoughts prior to though. I don't, some overnight rental in different areas isn't, I mean, we've let it out, I don't begrudge anybody for wanting to do overnight rental, but if we're going to do overnight rental, what we have required as a council in the past projects is that it's designed with that in mind. And we have a lot more parking. We have boat and RV storage or large trailer parking mixed in with it. The way this is set up as an overnight rental, I just don't, it doesn't work in that layout for me.
There are parts in this project that may well be more appropriately or appropriate to some consideration in that regard, but I agree with what Councilman Belliston is saying is here, just as a discrete piece and none of the rest of it being approved, it doesn't meet our what we've been trying to request of other builders for short-term rentals.
With those comments, Mayor, being said, and since there is no project to
Do we
consider
want to,
approving.
excuse me, do we want to table as opposed to?
No, I'm gonna make a motion we deny since there is no project. They can bring it back when they bring a project back.
Second.
I have a motion and a second.
Ivy, aye.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
And that is also denied. Item C was tabled. We'll move on to item 9, surplus vehicles. Consideration to approve the sale of surplus vehicles. Mike Shaw.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. What we're looking at is the surplus of our 2017 model trucks. This is our rollover vehicles. So we actually have 3 vehicles, plus we have an old 97 Dodge Caravan that has a bad transmission. So we're looking at getting approval to go ahead and put those out for a sealed bid sale. Council already approved the 91 digger truck, but we're actually going to include that in our advertisement as well.
I've just been wanting to see what I could do with the digger truck.
It's an all-wheel drive. It's
Boy, I'll tell you, that sounds like you could have fun with it.
basically a crane
Yeah.
that digs holes.
So when are these going to close bid?
So we will open bids December 6th.
Okay.
So 10 o'clock, December 6th, they're a sealed bid. They have to come in a sealed envelope. With
How do we
the,
notice it up? Because I know there's a fair amount of interest in a couple of those vehicles.
yeah, we actually advertise it in the newspaper and then phone calls. I get many people that tell me that they're interested. So I start making phone calls. I've already started making phone calls to people, telling them that this is the date that we're going to be closing on them. So there's a lot of interest in these. If we don't sell vehicles, like the last time we surplused, we had 4 police cars that the minimum bid was $800 on those. And we held them and we actually put them on KSL and did really well. Got 2,000, 1,800.
Oh, wow. So that might be an idea.
But once we go through our process of advertising in the sealed bid, and if we do not get anything, then I can actually go out and sell them as long as I do not go underneath the minimum bid that the council had set.
Okay. I didn't know we had a Grand Caravan, but I guess with a bad transmission, it wouldn't be out on the road.
Yeah, and it's been out of service for a long time.
That's our old admin.
It was the old admin. It was the old city manager
Was
when
it
I
city
came to work
manager?
here.
It was also our old, it was our old snack car during Christmas time too. We put gifts out. We put gifts in it, send out subdivision. And we used it.
Speaking of the current admin car, has it been getting much use?
I don't know.
The one underneath here.
Yeah, he
With
doesn't
that,
know
Mayor,
about it yet.
if there's no other discussion, I'm going to make
What
the
car?
motion. Is there a discussion from the council?
There's no discussion.
I'll make the motion that we approve the sale of our surplus vehicles as been outlined.
I have a motion, excuse me, in a second.
Maybe I.
Granger, aye.
Bellis and I.
Turek, aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Anything to report from your assigned committees?
Just, I had a, solid waste board, there's some minor costs that are being assessed to the solid waste district. There's gonna be like a household adjustment to the fees that are collected. They basically have passed those cost increases through, so just be forewarned on that.
We just received that documentation today and with the ordinance, and so we'll be preparing that to bring it back to council.
Also, I'll report that our MP 11 committee had our meeting this last month. It was our idea meeting where we brought all the ideas in of different changes to existing, additions to existing, total rebuilds and remakes, and we all threw them on a piece of paper to be put into the traffic modeling and see what they do for our exit 10 corridor over
Expanded
there.
a little bit into St. George, and
yeah, we kind of
talked about different access ways to help minimize traffic on exit 10 that were totally unrelated to the interchange.
Yeah, it was kind of a fun night of just ideas. They said every idea is on the table, and so we have interchange or accesses coming out of the back of Coles onto the freeway and different ways to get around. There's lots of ideas out there being plugged in, and so we'll keep you appraised as where that moves forward.
I'll tell you, the one thing that I liked about the discussion was as we were going through and people were hitting ideas on what could be done, the actual idea of an interchange at, Mall Drive or whatever was one of the last things that was discussed in my group. We tried to put alternatives out there first and see what made sense. So it was a good discussion, a good mix of ideas from all over the community.
The final active transportation document, I think, is been submitted to the city from that committee. Right, you got your copy? I'd appreciate having a copy.
You want a printed copy or a snuff copy?
You know, I still like printed.
Yeah, I still like to work with cash too, so.
Thank you.
The nice thing is when you print.
Printing it.
That's right. The nice thing about printing is you can print the invoice at the same time.
I recognize those issues, but you know, when you're trying to move from
I
place
agree.
to place, there are just things that work better. There's a reason why I have 2 computer monitors hooked to each other so I can open 4 documents at once on it.
Smart. Anything else to report? No, we'll move on to city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few projects I'll update on. Our Red Cliffs tank with our water projects, the easement issues we were working on have been resolved, and we'll bid that in December. You heard a little bit about that, where that fits in the whole scheme of things this evening. The downtown, you probably noticed the downtown stormwater project is complete. Punch lists are done. So those were the 2 roads over there. On our Parkway substation, the pad, I believe they did the last cement pour. As a matter of fact, if you go to, I just noticed just a few minutes ago that if you belong to the Washington City Power Facebook, you'll see pictures of the pad pour today. I believe that's the last pad pour that they have for the transformer site. There'll be some more concrete work, of course, but for the transformer is being tested this week, and we expect that it'll be delivered sometime the end of December and into January. We're currently working on some substation checks and battery bank testing in our existing substations. Regards to leisure services with the boilers, I think I mentioned that with the property swap, there was that storm drain that kind of crossed the property that we'd be swapping on. And so we're just getting prices to see what it would take to both swap or to remove and move that storm drain. And then it had modified the road a little bit. So we're just seeing how those costs kind of break out between what we would commit to and what they'd commit to, and then see where that goes from there. Ball Ventures we're involved in discussions with them on that. We did get a bid back from a contractor on Veterans Park. It's still a little high. And so there are discussions that are going on between the contractor and the city that is, I think, happening the first of next week, as well as looking again at identifying what parts of the project we can peel out and do in-house. The Green Spring Basin, I'd mentioned this last time about the grass in the Green Springs Park Basin. We're in the process of design. Again, that'll come back to you in January, but the design, the irrigation design's being worked on right now. And then we'll have to just work and make sure that we retain the characteristics of the detention basin through all of that. So I think those are the major highlights of the projects we've got going on, unless you have any questions.
Sure would like to see that park.
That one up there?
This one down here.
Boilers?
Well, it's just, yeah, it's been the process of just, you know, how challenging this bid process is a little bit. I will say this, the contractor bid that we got back was far better than what we had gotten in times past, but still just a little out of the budget. And so we're just still trying to refine that and seeing if we can push that into the budget. And we're still hopeful that we can do that. So that's why it's dragging a little bit more for us to kind of do that.
Do we have a time frame on that at all, Roger? Before the 4th of July?
Well, I mean, again, the thing that's kind of held us up right now is the fact that we don't have all the funds to do it with the pricing that was given. We're getting closer, and that's just taking time to get us closer. So we're probably about wrung this rag out. And so either we're not going to do the full extent of the project in the phases we need to because we wouldn't have the budget, or we'll be able to make it work with just, again, some additional in-house. And again, we're allowed to do that at this point because we met all the state bid requirements. So we're close, Mayor. I daresn't say but exactly when, but we're close to making a decision.
Sounds good. Anything else? All right, everyone. Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving with your families. If you're going to be with your families, if you're not, you can come over to my house. I won't be there, but you can come over.
Okay, now Chief knows that, and I keep special eye on the mayor for people who show up.
Just in closing, Mayor, we probably ought to wish our city manager a happy birthday
Yeah,
today.
that's
He
right.
kind of tipped over the edge.
Go get ice cream.
Listen,
Although he
And he's-
doesn't want anybody, he would never want anybody to know it's his birthday.
well, listen, just you guys holding the council meeting on this night is just kindness. So,
Wow.
thank you.
I'll eat a Lindor
We thought
truffle
we
in
could
your
give him a
honor.
better party than with us, so
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
so made.
So moved.
All right, we're adjourned.
Agreed.
Commissioner,